Hey everyone, it's Audrey here from Mom Generations, and I wanted to do this video specifically on hemangiomas. So I posted about a week, 2 weeks ago. I always do progress videos on Victoria's hemangioma because I looked for videos when we first found out she had one, and it was something that I really wanted to reach out or at least see another family that was going through this. And I'm such a visual person that as much as I didn't mind reading blog posts and reading different stories that people had posted in various forums, I really loved being able to actually see. And I really wasn't finding that. So I really thought to myself at that point, I want to do this with our daughter because I had hoped, and it's wonderful to see that it has, that it would help other people that are going through the same thing. So I wanted to do this video. Victoria is not here. She's actually at school right now. But after every video I do, I always get an influx of messages or emails from other people and just asking questions, other moms, other dads, grandparents even, of you know, that have somebody in their life that is going through this, and they want to know just kind of from me specific questions. So I wanted to take a moment. I wanted to do this video, and I hope this doesn't go too long because I know that long videos are long videos, but I really want this to be helpful. So I actually went through all of, and the reason I'm doing this is because I just got another email this morning from a woman who had asked me some questions about Victoria. She has a daughter who's going through the same exact thing right now. Her daughter is 23 months at this point, she had said. And you know what? I said, you know what? I'm going to go through all of the emails that I've gotten, go through some of the messages that I've gotten, even the comments too on the threads, and I pulled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions that are probably the most frequently asked. And I just wanted to quickly go through them and hope that this helps too, because when I do the videos of Victoria, I really don't kind of get into maybe like direct nitty-gritty stuff. Sometimes truly because she's there, and now that she kind of really does understand it, you know, I don't want her to be interpreting some of the stuff that really scared me early on. I can have the discussion with her when she's a little bit older. But so I'm gonna kick it off really quickly. The first question I always get is, did we use beta blockers, or why we did and why, or why we did or why we didn't. So we did not use beta blockers on Victoria. We did not use beta blockers because of really 2 reasons. I couldn't find enough information about them, and that scared me a little bit. Again, this is back in 2013. There's been much more that's come out in the last almost 5 years. So please use that as a reference as well, as a reference point. This was 5 years ago. And number 2, Victoria did not have a hemangioma that was medically worrisome for a doctor. So what do I mean by that? Her hemangioma was right here on her forehead. It was about, I'd say, a little bit bigger than a $50, but it wasn't in her eye. It wasn't growing into her eye, it wasn't growing into her nasal passage, and it wasn't growing near her mouth or near an appendage where it really was going to affect her medically. So once we realized that that was obviously not something we had to be concerned about, it didn't worry me so much about using the beta blockers. It really did become at that point a vanity thing. I will say this, early on, because when you do have a hemangioma on your head, the concern did and was brought to us that they needed to make sure that the hemangioma wasn't growing deep into Victoria's brain, which scared me completely when that was brought up. I can't even at all put into words how much that scared me. I had this beautiful little baby, and about 3 or 4 months old. I remember they had told me that. Now, one thing that they had definitely said was that, you know, you would begin to see some markers that were happening. She wasn't hitting certain milestones. I remember you could do it. You obviously could have done a CAT scan, MRI to make sure. Our doctor didn't feel that it was, the doctor that we were using to just specializes in this. By the look of it, by the size of it, he didn't think this was of a concern. And then as we got older, as she got older, you know, we were then informed that she would have missed certain milestones. She wouldn't be walking properly. She'd be, you know, her coordination, her speech. So obviously we kept them in our mind. But I do want to preface, again, this was 5 years ago. We did not use beta blockers, and once we realized it was purely a vanity thing, we just stayed course. How quickly did it grow? So Victoria, when she was first born, I actually remember they gave her to me and they thought that it was a bruise. She was born via C-section. So obviously babies that are born via C-section, because they weren't born vaginally, usually there's not that many markings on their head. I remember the nurse telling me that, you know, normally a C-section baby, I remember my sons that were William, Alex, and Ben all had, like, you know, little cone heads, some markings, because they were actually stuck in the birth canal. C-section babies are usually, you know, I kind of, you know, there's no other word for me to say, kind of like they have this perfectly round head, really not that many marks. And I remember they were very concerned about a little bruise, they said, on her head, which now I know was her hemangioma. But I remember them testing her immediately for a couple things. I was actually in such a daze from recovering immediately from the C-section. They did it immediately. I mean, like within the first 12 hours of her being born. And I remember the test came back. I feel like they tested for like diabetes. Please don't quote me on these things. I really do forget the exact test, because I remember when they came up and they said she tested negative for everything, we were like, oh, okay, good. I remember the nurse just said, you know what? It probably is just a bruise. That, you know, that was all July 9th, the day she was born. So I did notice maybe 2 days later that the little bruise didn't go away, and they were concerned about it. I mean, concerns enough where every time the pediatric doctor came in at the hospital, she kept measuring it to see if it was getting any bigger. Because I was a C-section mom, we were there for a week, and probably around day 4, day 5, the doctor that was on call had said to me, you know what, I believe this is like a strawberry. We're gonna keep our eye on it, but, you know, and she said, use the word hemangioma. I had known one other family that had a daughter with a hemangioma, and it was a little girl's forehead. And I remember it was just, you know, obviously it was it started off kind of flat and then grew to a kind of like a bulge off of her head, and it was red, and that was the only marker I had of a hemangioma. But within coming home, so we had heard the word hemangioma. We were okay, we'll keep an eye on it. And then when we got home, I mean, if you experience this, you know pretty quickly. Within 2 to 3 weeks, it was pink. Within a month, it was red. It was just a little circle on her head, you know, just tiny. And then it just started to grow. And it grew rapidly, I will say. I would say for the first 2 to 9 months, it grew rapidly. It got very red, and then it started to raise off of her head. When it started to raise off of her head, that's when I got a little nervous, because it was in one of those spots, and it was also the winter and in the spring, but spring in Rhode Island is very cold, where I would constantly have to put hats on her. I couldn't let her go out without a hat on. I wanted her head covered so she wouldn't get sick. So basically what happened to us, which I'm answering another question because I'm always asked too, because Victoria's hemangioma ulcerated in December of 2013. So she was, let me see, July, August, September, October, November, December. She was about 6 to 7 months we went through this process. Essentially, it seemed to be the friction on the hats that I was using. And I used cotton, I used wool, I used cashmere. I was using anything that I thought would feel good on her. And I was also using Aquaphor on it as well, just to kind of cut down on potential friction, because the doctor did say to me, just be careful of this. That skin can easily ulcerate. And unfortunately it did. It did ulcerate, and it started to bleed. And if you have a child with a hemangioma, you know that when it bleeds, it bleeds. Even if it's a tiny little pinhole, it bleeds pretty severely and a lot. And it scared me because it's on her head. So it ulcerated in 2 places. We immediately went to Boston Children's Hospital, where her doctor is, and we had to, for I think 6 to 8 weeks, we actually had to wrap it. He gave us obviously special cream, which was like maybe just, I feel, you know, it was like a Vaseline Aquaphor type of deal. But we'd have to put that on, put gauze on it, and literally wrap her head in a gauze mesh, so that it would stay on and that there would be no more friction. When it ulcerated in 2 spots, they were almost like little divots. So it was at this point very puffed off of her head, and then but there were 2 spots that were divoted, and those were the ulcerations. I don't know if it hurt her. I remember asking the doctor, is she in pain? Does it hurt? And he did tell me that, you know, it probably shouldn't hurt her. If it hurt her, she'd be crying, she'd be in a lot of pain, and she wasn't giving us those signals. My heart broke because I had this beautiful little baby that I was so worried about, and would have to do this head wrap to her, this process every night before bed. And I remember waking up every morning and praying there wasn't going to be blood on that gauze. I do remember that. That was scary. I just felt bad. Felt bad for her because she was literally 6 or 7 months, and I felt like it was my fault that ulcerated because of the hats. So, I'm sorry. You know, it is what it is, right? Another question is, when did it start to regress? And regress means just another word for start to go away. And it started to kind of regress and go away after about a year. I remember someone saying to me, whose son had a hemangioma, it's going to grow very quickly the first year, and then all of a sudden you're going to realize one day that it is not getting any bigger. And that was actually exactly what happened. You know, obviously it's easy to gauge because it's kind of, you know, you just use your child's birthday as a marker. And it did grow rapidly, quickly, and off of her head raised. The raising part was the scariest part because it was very puffy and raised. But it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard as a rock. So, you know, it wasn't like it was like this raised, hard thing. It was, you know, it was puffy. So it started to regress around 12 months old. And how do I know that? It's just because it stopped growing. I remember every time I went to the doctor, our pediatrician, he would measure it, and it would be getting bigger. And around her first year appointment, from the next one, it hadn't gotten any bigger. So I was very, very happy about that this was the size it was going to be. Now, I would say it started to actually change color, which I remember people had said it would be obviously blood red, which it was, and then it would start to get gray. It actually almost turns into like a dark, like a purplish, then a gray, and then now it's her skin color. It's flush to her head. It's her actual skin color. And it started to do that, I would say, from 18 months to maybe 3.5 is when I really saw the true change of the regression, not only in color but in size. And the puffiness started to decrease very much on its own, and then the color started to change. And again, we're talking, you know, we're talking maybe 2 years. From 1 year to 3 years was when I noticed that true, pretty big, gigantic change. And I have been told, and we're not at that mark yet, but I have been told that around 6 years old, whatever it looks like when your child is 6 years old, that is what it will be like. So Victoria is going to be 5 in July. So, and I did my video. You can easily go back to my video that I did on YouTube and see what it looks like now. So again, I have been told between, I guess, like 5 and 6. That is how it will stay. So, that's that. Now the regression itself, a question I get, how has the regression been for Victoria? Victoria has no idea. I mean, Victoria thinks that hemangiomas are just part of everybody's vocabulary. Victoria was saying the word hemangioma, very early on, because we've been always very honest with her. She has 4 older brothers who were very protective of her. One of the questions I get is, how do people deal with it? And I think for me, that was probably the toughest part. I'm going to be honest with you, especially that first year. People come over and they automatically want, you kind of hear the, and it's just being very honest and direct with them. It's, hey, listen, she has a hemangioma. It's kind of like a birthmark. Just quick, fast. This is what it is. She's fine medically, but it's just, it's a hemangioma. It's on her head. I remember having a lot of little kids ask what's wrong with her. That was a question we always got. I remember my sons would get very protective, as they should, and I would hope they would be, of people that would ask in not a nice way. And I was okay with that too. I was okay with that too. My sons were never rude back, but they were protective. And I think it really was a good lesson for all of us to learn, in that, you know what, everybody has something, everybody has a situation, everybody has a story, and don't judge a book by its cover. I remember we were at Disney once, and I wrote a blog post about this. This hurt me to the core. And I had a little boy sitting next to us. It was at night. We were taking the trolley back. I was holding Victoria. She was sleeping. We got to the hotel. The lights went on in the little bus that brings you back to the hotels. And it was when Victoria's hemangioma was as big as it had been. And he looked at her. He was probably about 10 or 11, and he said, "Ugh, she's disgusting." And when I tell you, it took all of me as a mother not to say anything to that little boy back, really waiting for his mother to have a response, which she didn't do immediately. That killed me. That was the only nasty, mean thing that I do remember happening. That hurt. That hurt. I remember getting off that bus, and I'm going to tell you right now, for the first year, I don't think I cried. You know what I mean? I held it all together because I wanted to. I needed to. I held it all together. That broke me. It was almost like a flood had just been burst, and the tears just came. And I cried, I feel like, for an hour. I cried for Victoria. I cried for my sons who wanted to say something and didn't. I cried for, you know, just kind of like the unknown. I just kind of let it all out because I knew it was nothing but a vanity thing. But it hurt me because no one wants to hear their child, who they think is the most beautiful thing on the planet, called disgusting. That hurt me. Another question we get is, what were our biggest concerns? And I feel like I addressed it. You know, our biggest concerns was if it was at all medically it hurt her at all, if it would potentially be something that she would be not okay with, that we didn't do beta blockers early on. You know, I often thought that. I didn't know what it would eventually look like, and thank goodness, you know, she seems to be a strong little, strong little badass. So I don't worry about Victoria, anybody saying anything. I mean, she had a swimming lesson yesterday, and I could tell someone said something, and she said it's a hemangioma, and it doesn't even look like anything at this point now. It's just some discoloration on her skin. So, you know, I feel like being honest with Victoria and being very, letting her know in the best way I can what it is, and just you tell people, and being okay with that. That was a huge thing for me. So let me see. Let me just go through my questions. When did the beta blockers quickly? It started to regress. How it regressed. How it ulcerated. How we deal with people. Our biggest concerns. Though I think I've covered every single question that we're pretty much asked. And you know what, as always, if you have any questions, please ask me. My biggest advice to anybody out there who is going through this, number one, find a doctor that specializes in these, that you trust, that you love, and that you don't feel bad asking a million questions to. We searched high and low for a dermatologist that was going to be that person. I went to 2 people, and I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't like either one of them. And I'm not someone that doesn't like people. I didn't get a good vibe. And I remember one of the nurses said to me when we went in with Victoria, "Oh, she's so cute. And when she gets the beta blockers, she's going to be gorgeous." That, I literally said to my husband, "Grab the bags, we're going." Like, that was not what I wanted to hear. And she didn't mean it to be rude. She was just having a conversation, but it was not the right conversation to have with me at that moment. This is when she was literally 2 or 3 months old. I ended up finding a specialist. We live in Rhode Island, Boston Children's Hospital, Dr. Green, tremendous. I was recommended to him by literally 3 or 4 different people who were going through it. And I didn't know many people at that time, but everybody that I did seem to connect with at that time when Victoria was born all said him. So I went to him. And then second, just be knowledgeable about it as much as you can, but don't soak in enough knowledge where it's going to scare you. And that's what I did. I allowed myself to search every website known to man and try to keep myself in the know without talking to my doctor. And I remember at one point, my husband said to me, "You have to stop going on WebMD. This is not healthy for you. We have a doctor, we have a plan, and we're going to stay course. And you have to embrace that. And once I let go of that, and once I connected with a couple women out there who were going through the same thing, I did feel weight lifted off of me. So those are my 2 pieces of advice. Let me be that person for you that you need to connect with and ask questions to. I'm an open book. I'm fine with that. Email me, comment, message me, whatever you need to do. Let me be that person. I have been an open book about this since we started this journey, and I will continue to be. And I just want to help other people out there. So I see I'm creeping up to 20 minutes, so let me wrap this up. Thank you guys for watching. Again, if you need anything, please let me know. Have a great day.